It's good to be able to share with the Open Table community in this way, even if all we can do at the moment is to meet via computer screen. At least in this way we can still gather and reflect together on the work of God in our lives and encourage one another in faith. The Gospel reading for this week begins in Matthew chapter 9 and then runs through into the first few verses of chapter 10. Here it is, from Matthew 9 and beginning in verse 35. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the labourers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out labourers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out, and to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew the tax collector, James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions: Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news: the kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment. So the reading begins with a snapshot of the early days of the ministry of Jesus. Jesus travels around villages and cities, teaching, sharing the good news of the kingdom, and offering healing. Crowds gather. Everyone wants to see Jesus, to hear him, be touched by him. We get the sense that he was very popular. And then Matthew says this, and this verse stands out for me today. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. I wonder what thoughts and feelings the word crowds provokes within you as you hear it today. Many of us are recognizing in these days how much we want, at least from time to time, to be part of a crowd. We long for days when we can meet with more than just a handful of people, when we can join a congregation again, or be part of a gathered audience or sporting crowd. At the same time, over the last 2 weeks, we've witnessed a great deal in the news about crowds gathering to protest about social distancing, gathering to protest that Black Lives Matter, pulling down statues. Maybe that's why this verse stands out for me. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. The first thing that occurs to me is that when Jesus sees a crowd, he sees every individual within it. Matthew 9 is full of stories of crowds which included people who needed help. the start of the chapter, we read of a paralysed man brought to Jesus by his friends on a mat. And despite the crowd, Jesus sees the man in need. When Mark and Luke tell the same story, the friends have to break up a roof to let the man down to meet Jesus. I don't suppose the house owner was too keen, but despite the damage, Jesus sees the man who needed healing. In the middle of the chapter, we read about a crowd which included both the leader of the synagogue, whose daughter had died, and a woman who had suffered from bleeding for 12 years. And so it goes on. In every story, Jesus recognizes the individual and brings them wholeness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. You know that I often dip into a bit of New Testament Greek, and those who know me know what's coming next because you'll have heard me say it before, but we need to hear it often in my view. When we read that Jesus had compassion for them, it's a powerful word, splagnitsomai, based on the word splanknon, which refers to a person's insides. The idea is that emotions are based in our inner being. I'm pretty sure it's the word that we get our word spleen from. So when Jesus had compassion, it's not just casual concern. He cares passionately about the crowd and those within it who are in need. And Matthew follows this by saying that people in the crowd were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Again, without wanting to overstate the case, the word translated as harassed could just mean troubled or annoyed, but literally it means skinned alive. And the word that appears as helpless literally means thrown down or thrown aside. So Jesus cares passionately for people in crowds. In particular, he cares for those who have been mistreated and cast aside. It's as a result of this that Jesus sends out 12 disciples. He sends them out to those who are lost, the harassed and the helpless, and instructs them to take good news, to be good news, to take an assurance that God is near. So let's make no mistake. Black lives matter to God, and they should matter to God's people. When people say, "Me too," their lives matter to God, and they should matter to God's people. Whenever people are singled out for their gender, their sexuality, their different ability, when they're abused and thrown aside and left harassed and helpless, their lives matter to God, and they should matter to God's people. I pray that God's Spirit will strengthen me and inspire me and you to be alongside and to reach out to embody the good news of God's compassion in Christ Jesus. God bless. Stay safe.